Summer is coming to an end. Martin's 5 children have grown up, and the wild geese are preparing to fly back south. Neil felt excited at the thought of returning to his hometown. Neil imagined how surprised his parents would be when he led the Martin family back home. But now that I have become a little man, they probably won't like me anymore. Thinking of this, Neil shed tears sadly. At this time, Martin came over and said, "We are finally going home. Your mother always feeds us delicious food. We will see them soon." Neil said sadly, "But I can't go back. If they saw what I look like now, they might send me to the circus." Martin patted his head and asked, "Yes, you never told me how you became so small." Neil said, "Because I bullied an elf, he used magic to shrink me." Neil suddenly remembered something and continued, "I heard an owl whisper in the castle that there is a way to break this spell." Martin said, "Let's go find Oscar. Maybe she has a way." Neil and Martin found Oscar and told what happened, including the owl's conversation they heard in the castle. Oscar comforted Neil and said, "I haven't heard what they said. But don't worry, I will find a way to let you lift the magic and return to your parents." Neil was very grateful, and he had hope again. The next day, Oscar found Golgo and said, "Go to the castle to find the owl and ask how to remove Neil's magic. However, don't scare my friends." Golgo readily agreed. "Mom, don't worry. I will complete the task." After saying that, he spread his wings and flew away. Golgo flew very fast and arrived in a moment. The animals in the castle saw an eagle flying over and hid in a hurry. When Golgo found the owl, she was napping in the tree. Golgo playfully pecked the owl's head with his beak. The owl woke up and turned around to look. She was so frightened that she almost fell from the tree. Golgo smiled and said, "Hello, Aunt Owl. I'm sorry to disturb your rest. Mother Oscar asked me to ask you how to remove Neil's magic. Please tell me." The owl said reluctantly, "This secret I can't say it easily, but because it is Oscar's request, I will tell you." The elf said that he must first become a brave, kind boy who can think about others. Then, when he returns to his hometown, the magic, it will be lifted. But before that, if Neil knows the secret, the magic will never be lifted. After Golgo thanked the owl, he quickly returned to Labolin and told Oscar the news. After listening, Oscar thought about it. She saw that Neil had proved his kindness and bravery during the journey, so how could he prove that he could think of others? She came up with a good idea and told Golgo quietly. The next morning, Neil couldn't wait to come to Oscar's nest and asked eagerly, "Captain Oscar, is there any news?" Oscar didn't say anything, and Golgo smiled and replied, "I have already been there, castle, and met Aunt Owl." "Did she tell you the secret?" Neil asked anxiously. "Of course, they said that to remove the magic, you need to find a substitute, so that he can bear the magic for you, and you can go back to being a normal child." Hearing this, Neil's hope was shattered again. Who will be my substitute? Maybe I will never be able to return to my parents. Neil wiped his tears. Modine also came to comfort Nils not to lose heart. A replacement will surely be found in the future. After spring and summer, wild geese flock with a group of newly born wild geese chicks. Under the leadership of Oscar, together with the Martin family, they set out to the south. In flight, Uke often lags behind. He flew for less than an hour before he cried out pitifully, "Captain, Captain, my wings can't fly anymore." Oscar replied, "Hold on, and you can rest when you land." Uke continued, "But I'm hungry. I don't want to fly anymore. I want to rest." At this time, Martin and Janice began to blame the little guy. "Listen to the captain's order and hold on. If you make trouble again, the captain will kick you out of the team." Uke was scared after hearing this and had to continue flying. In this way, the geese flew back along the way they came. Every time they passed a familiar place, Martin and Neil talked about what they had experienced. Martin laughed and recalled, but Neil was always worried. He was still thinking about who would be willing to be his substitute. When they arrived at the castle, everyone stopped to rest. The storks and friends in the castle came out to entertain them warmly. However, Uke got into an argument with Mr. Stork's 2 children over food. Everyone looked at the willful Uke and shook their heads. There was nothing they could do. After several days of flying, Neil finally saw his home village. He said excitedly, "Captain Oscar, let's take a rest here. I want to go home and have a look." Oscar nodded, and when it was getting dark, he arranged for everyone to rest in the pond behind the village. It was getting dark, and Neil couldn't wait to walk along a path towards the village. Martin also followed behind with his family. Martin told Janice and the children about the place where he once lived. After a while, Neil walked into his yard. The yard was quiet. All the chickens and geese had fallen asleep. Only the sound of voices came from inside the house. The door was slightly open, and a narrow strip of light came from it. Neil peered through the crack in the door. Nothing has changed in the house. Dad and Mom are sitting at the table. Mom is knitting a sweater and Dad is repairing a fishing net. Under the table, the cat was curled up and purring softly. Where will our little Neil be now? Mom sighed and said to herself, maybe he's wandering on the road, suffering from cold and hunger, sick, and no one to take care of him. Dad frowned and said nothing, sighed deeply. Neil's mother continued, It has been so many days and there is still no news about him. Will we never see him again? She wiped her tears as she spoke. Seeing this, Neil also cried sadly, and he almost rushed in and hugged his mother. What did you say? Neil will definitely come back, Dad said angrily. Neil felt even sadder when he heard his father's words. Accidentally, he touched the door and made a squeaking sound. The napping cat immediately became alert, and Neil hurriedly ran into the yard. At this time, the Martin family was surrounding a pile of grain. Martin said, This is barley. We usually eat this. It tastes very good. Uke took a bite and said, while chewing, It's delicious. Let's stay too. I don't want to fly anymore. Neil said frustratedly, Martin, please stay. I have to go. I can't let my parents see me like this. After saying that, Neil left sadly. Martin would not let Neil leave alone. This journey has made them the closest friends. He decided to bear the magic for Neil and reunite him with his family. He caught up and told Neil the idea. Neil listened to Martin's idea and was very happy to finally be reunited with his family. But when he saw Janice and the goslings behind Martin, he suddenly realized that doing so was selfish. He thought for a while and said firmly to Martin, My good partner, I have decided not to remove the magic so that we can travel together. Martin was surprised. Do you really want to be like this forever? Suddenly a blue light flashed, and Neil grew bigger and bigger, finally turning into his original appearance. Martin was startled, and Neil's magic was lifted. At this time, the elf in the forest appeared. He nodded with satisfaction at Neil and said, You have proved your courage and kindness, and truly think about others, so the magic is gone. I hope you can remember it forever. This has been a wonderful journey. After saying that, the golden light flashed and disappeared. The door creaked open, and Neil's mother came out of the house holding a lamp. Why did the goose run into the yard? Suddenly she saw Neil standing in the yard. She was so surprised that the lamp fell to the ground. Neil's father also ran out of the house in a hurry. He was also shocked. Neil couldn't wait to run over and hug them tightly. He felt very happy. Oscar smiled slightly when she saw all this from a distance, and she silently blessed Neil and the Martin family. Early the next morning, a group of wild geese made a quacking sound over the yard. Neil ran to the yard and waved his arms vigorously towards Oscar and the wild geese. Goodbye, dear friends. The wild geese flew away, and the Martin family stayed. Nils started going to school on time every day, playing with the marten after school, and no longer bullied them. Martin's children also grew into beautiful geese day by day.